The revolving door swept him into a hush of cashmere and crystal. He approached the front desk with the ticket in his hand. The receptionist did not look up from her screen. She called security. He checked his watch. The revolving door swept him into a hush of cashmere and crystal. The lobby of the Harrington Grand Hotel was a cathedral of wealth. Marble floors with gray veining that caught the light like water. A crystal chandelier with teardrop prisms that cast rainbows across the walls, and a grandfather clock against the far wall that ticked with the slow, deliberate authority of a heartbeat. Ethan Caldwell stepped through the door, his 6-year-old daughter Lily's hand wrapped around his thumb, and paused. The cool air hit his face, carrying the scent of fresh white orchids and polished mahogany. He looked up at the chandelier, its 1,000 tiny lights flickering like distant stars, and for a moment he forgot why he was here. Lily tugged at his hand. "Daddy, look," she whispered, pointing at a marble lion near the concierge desk, its mane carved in intricate loops. She wore a pale yellow dress with hand-stitched daisies around the hem, a dress her mother had made 3 years ago, before the hospital, before the clock at 3:17 a.m. The hem was frayed now, but Lily never complained. She clutched a small stuffed rabbit in her other hand, one ear loose and dangling. Ethan squeezed her hand gently and guided her forward. He approached the front desk, his scuffed brown leather work boots silent on the marble floor. The faded navy blue cotton work shirt he wore was clean but worn, the sleeves rolled to his elbows. The brass key on a leather cord around his neck pressed against his chest, a small weight he had carried for 2 years. In his right hand, he held a cream-colored ticket, the edges soft from being folded and unfolded a dozen times. It read, "Harrington Grand Hotel. One-night suite raffle, complimentary dinner, valid through December 2024. He had won it at the local community center raffle 2 weeks ago. Lily had been so excited, her brown eyes wide as she clutched the ticket and whispered, "We're going to sleep in a castle, Daddy." The receptionist did not look up from her screen. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and a navy blazer with a brass name tag that read, Amanda. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the practiced efficiency of someone who had seen 1,000 faces and forgotten them all. Ethan placed the ticket on the polished mahogany counter, his hand steady despite the tremor in his chest. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and even. "I have a raffle ticket. For the suite." Amanda's eyes flicked from the screen to the ticket, then to his shirt, then to his boots. She did not look at his face. Her gaze traveled from collar to shoes in less than a second, and what she saw did not match the world she lived in. She straightened her back and sighed, the sound small and dismissive. "There's nothing under your name, sir," she said, her eyes already returning to the screen. The raffle was for registered hotel guests only. Ethan felt Lily's hand tighten around his thumb. He did not argue. He did not explain that the ticket had been given to him by the community center director, that it was valid, that he had called the hotel twice to confirm. He simply checked his watch. A simple silver watch with a cracked leather band, the face scratched and worn. 7:48 p.m. He had promised Lily they would see the chandelier and eat dinner in a restaurant with white tablecloths. He had promised her a castle. Amanda picked up the phone. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. "Security to the front desk, please." She set the receiver down and turned to Ethan, her smile thin and practiced. "I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to leave." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. His hazel eyes were steady, tired, but not angry. He had learned, in the 2 years since Sarah died, that anger was a luxury he could not afford. He had a daughter to raise, a job to keep, a life to rebuild from the wreckage. He reached down and picked up the ticket, folding it carefully and placing it in his shirt pocket. "Come on, Lily," he said softly, and took her hand. The security guard arrived as they reached the revolving door. A large man in a black uniform, his hands clasped behind his back. He did not touch them, did not speak, but his presence was enough. Ethan pushed the door and stepped into the cool night air, the sounds of the city washing over him. The traffic hummed, the street lights cast long shadows, and somewhere a car horn blared. He felt Lily's small pulse against his palm, steady and alive. In the parking lot, Ethan leaned against the hood of his 2003 Ford Focus. The paint faded, and the rear bumper held on with duct tape. He pulled out his phone, a cracked smartphone with a shattered screen, and dialed the number on the ticket. A recorded voice answered. "Thank you for calling the Harrington Grand Hotel. Our offices are closed for the evening. Please leave a message." He did not leave one. He just stood there, the brass key cold against his chest, and watched the lights of the hotel through the rain-streaked windshield. He drove Lily home to their small apartment on the edge of town. The building was old, the hallways smelling of boiled cabbage and damp carpet. Their unit was on the third floor, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a leaky faucet, and a living room with a couch that doubled as his bed. Ethan put Lily to bed at 8:30, reading her a story about a rabbit who found a magic key, her small hand clutching his until she fell asleep. He sat in the dark kitchen afterward, the ticket on the table in front of him, the silence pressing in from all sides. 2 years ago, he had sat in a different room, a hospital room, the clock on the wall reading 3:17 a.m. Sarah's hand had been cold in his, her eyes closed, her chest still. The doctors had said it was a pulmonary embolism, sudden and silent. He had not believed them. He had held her hand for 3 hours, waiting for her to wake up, to squeeze his fingers, to tell him it was a mistake. But she never did. He had walked out of that room with a brass key in his pocket, the key to their apartment, the apartment he could not afford to keep. He had sold everything, moved into this place, and started over. He worked as a handyman now, fixing leaky faucets and broken light fixtures for people who could afford to pay him in cash. Margaret, the estate manager for a wealthy family on the north side, was his only steady client. She was 62, with silver-gray hair tied in a low bun and a warm, steady presence that reminded him of his grandmother. She always paid him in full, always offered him a cup of tea, and never asked about the brass key. He carried 2 of every tool in his dented green metal toolbox, a habit Sarah used to laugh about. "You'd back up a sunrise if you could," she would say. He would smile and say, "Just in case." The next morning, Ethan dropped Lily at school. The principal, a kind woman with gray-streaked hair, greeted them at the door. "Good morning, Lily," she said, her voice warm. "I love your dress." Lily smiled, her brown eyes lighting up, and ran into the classroom. Ethan stood in the hallway for a moment, watching her, then turned and walked back to his car. At the Harrington Grand Hotel, James Harrington sat in his office, the security footage frozen on Ethan's face. He was a tall man, 48, with silver-gray hair slicked back and pale blue eyes that missed nothing. He had watched the footage 3 times now, each time noticing something different. The way the man had checked his watch, the way he had not argued, the way his daughter had pressed her face into his side, her small hand clutching his thumb. James leaned back in his leather chair and picked up the phone. He called the community center. The director confirmed the raffle was legitimate. The ticket was valid. The man, Ethan Caldwell, had won fair and square. James hung up and stared at the frozen image on his screen. The man's shirt was worn, his boots scuffed, his face tired. But there was something in his eyes, a steadiness, a patience that James recognized. He had seen it in men who had been through war, who had lost everything and still got up every morning. James searched for Ethan's contact information. He found only a voicemail number on the ticket stub. He typed a text message, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then he sent it. "Please come back. I need to see you." He called the front desk. "Prepare the presidential suite," he said, "and have a dinner reservation set for 2. No, 3. A child's menu as well." Amanda, the receptionist, stared at her screen. The name on the reservation, Caldwell. Her stomach dropped. She looked up at the lobby, at the marble floors and the crystal chandelier, and for the first time she felt small. The general manager's office door closed behind him, and he stood in the quiet hallway with his daughter's hand in his, the brass key cold against his chest. The clock on the wall read 9:47 p.m. The corridor was empty, the carpet a deep burgundy that swallowed sound, and for a long moment Ethan did not move. He could feel the pulse in Lily's wrist, small and steady, pressed against his palm. She had not cried. She had not asked why the nice lady with the name tag had made them leave. She had simply held his hand and walked beside him. The stuffed rabbit dangling from her other hand, its loose ear brushing against her yellow dress. Ethan knelt down. He looked at his daughter's face, at the braids Sarah used to tie every morning before school, at the brown eyes that watched him with a trust he had not earned and could not afford to break. "Are you okay?" he asked. Lily nodded. "The man said we couldn't stay." "No, he did." "Is it because of my dress?" Ethan's chest tightened. "No, baby. It's not because of your dress. It's because they didn't understand something. But that's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's just a mistake." She considered this, her small fingers tightening around his thumb. "Can we go home now?" "Yes, we can go home now." He stood, took her hand again, and walked through the lobby toward the revolving door. The receptionist did not look up. The security guard stood with his arms crossed, watching them leave. The crystal chandelier threw light across the marble floor, and Ethan caught his own reflection in the polished surface. A man in a faded work shirt, a brass key against his chest, a child at his side. He looked like exactly what they thought he was, and he let them think it. The parking lot was cold. The asphalt glittered with frost under the streetlights, and Ethan buckled Lily into her car seat, the rabbit placed carefully beside her. He got into the driver's seat, started the engine, and sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel, staring at the hotel's glass facade. 7 floors, 120 rooms, a restaurant with a wine list that cost more than his monthly rent. And somewhere inside, a cream envelope with embossed gold script that had promised them a night, a dinner, a kindness that had turned out to be conditional. He drove home. The apartment was on the 2nd floor of a building built in 1972, with a broken intercom and a landlord who answered texts every 3 days. Ethan carried Lily up the stairs, her head resting on his shoulder, her breathing already slow. He unlocked the door with the brass key around his neck, the same key that had opened Sarah's hospital room, that had opened the door to their first apartment, that had never left his skin since the day she died. He laid Lily on her bed, a small room with a window that faced the parking lot, a poster of a cartoon rabbit on the wall, a blue nightlight that cast soft shadows across the floor. He pulled the blanket to her chin, tucked the rabbit under her arm, and stood for a moment in the doorway, watching her breathe. Then he walked to the kitchen and sat at the table. The ticket was still in his pocket. He took it out and laid it flat on the worn laminate surface, smoothing the creases with his thumb. Cream paper, gold embossed letters. A serial number, 4472. It looked like what it was, a winning ticket for a charity raffle at the Oakwood Community Center, where he had taken Lily last Saturday because the flyer said there would be face painting and a bounce house. He had bought 3 tickets for $5. He had written his name and phone number on the back of each one. He had folded them and dropped them into a glass jar on a folding table covered in a blue cloth. And then, at 7:34 p.m., a woman in a red dress had pulled a ticket from the jar and read the number aloud, and Lily had tugged his sleeve and said, "Daddy, that's our number." And the woman had smiled and handed him the cream envelope, and Lily had jumped up and down, her braids flying, her laughter filling the hall. He had not expected to win. He had not expected anything. He had walked into that community center the way he walked into everything now, quietly, without expectation, grateful for any moment that made his daughter's face light up. The raffle was a small thing, a night in a hotel, a dinner. It was not the kind of prize that changed a life, but it was the kind of prize that made a 6-year-old girl believe that good things could happen to people like them. And then the hotel had decided that people like them did not belong in a lobby with a crystal chandelier. Ethan set the ticket down. He picked up his phone. The screen was cracked in the top corner, a hairline fracture from the time he had dropped it while carrying Lily and a bag of groceries. He opened his contacts, scrolled past Margaret's name. She had texted him earlier, asking if he needed anything, and found the number on the ticket, the hotel's general manager's office. He had called it from the parking lot, his voice steady, his words precise. "Hello, my name is Ethan Caldwell. I was at your hotel tonight with my daughter. We had a winning ticket for a suite and dinner. The receptionist called security and asked us to leave. I would like to speak to someone about this. Please call me back." He had left his number. He had waited. No one had called. Now, at 10:14 p.m., he sat in the dark kitchen with the ticket in front of him and the weight of the evening pressing against his ribs. He thought about Sarah. He thought about the way she had looked at him the first time he had been dismissed by someone who thought he was nothing. A bank manager, a landlord, a doctor who had spoken to him like he was a child. She had taken his hand and said, "They don't see you, but I do. And that's the only pair of eyes that matters." Sarah had died on a Tuesday at 3:17 a.m. The clock on the wall of the hospital room had ticked past the hour, and the machines had made a sound like a long exhale, and the nurse had touched his shoulder, and he had not moved. He had sat there for 3 hours, holding her hand, feeling the warmth leave her fingers, the brass key cold against his chest. He had not cried. He had not spoken. He had simply sat until the sun came up and the janitor came in to clean the room, and then he had stood, kissed her forehead, and walked out into a world that did not know what it had lost. The next morning, he had quit his job as a project manager for a commercial real estate firm. He had sold the house. He had moved into the apartment with Lily and a suitcase of clothes and a box of Sarah's things that he had not opened since. He had taken the first job that let him pick his daughter up at 3 p.m., a handyman position for a property management company that paid in cash and asked no questions. He fixed leaky faucets. Leaky. He replaced broken light switches. He carried 2 of every tool because Sarah used to laugh and say he would back up a sunrise if he could. And now, at 10:14 p.m., he sat in the dark kitchen with a winning ticket on the table and a daughter who had been told she did not belong in a building with a crystal chandelier. He picked up his phone again. He opened the hotel's website. He found the general manager's name, James Harrington. He found the corporate office's number. He wrote it down on a piece of paper, folded it, and tucked it into his pocket beside the ticket. Then he went to bed. He woke at 5:47 a.m., as he always did. The apartment was quiet, the light gray and thin through the blinds. He made coffee, drank it standing at the kitchen counter, and checked his phone. No messages, no calls. He showered, dressed in a clean work shirt, and packed Lily's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, a juice box. He woke her at 6:30, helped her into her uniform, and walked her to school. The principal was a woman named Mrs. Delgado, who had been kind to them since the first day, who had never once looked at Ethan's work shirt and seen anything but a father. She smiled at Lily, took her hand, and said, "Ready for spelling tests?" Lily nodded. She hugged Ethan's leg, then ran into the building, her braids bouncing, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Ethan stood on the sidewalk until she disappeared inside. Then he walked to his truck and drove to the hotel. He parked in the same spot as the night before. He sat in the cab for a long moment, the engine idling, the ticket in his pocket. The building looked different in the morning light, less grand, less intimidating, just glass and steel and a revolving door that turned in a slow, steady circle. He got out. He walked to the entrance. He did not have a plan. He had only the ticket and the phone number in his pocket, and the quiet certainty that he was not going to let his daughter believe that the world was made of people who looked at you and decided you did not count. The revolving door swept him into the lobby, the same marble floor, the same crystal chandelier, the same polished mahogany front desk. The receptionist from the night before was not there. A young man in a navy blazer stood behind the counter, his name tag reading Marcus. Ethan walked to the desk. He placed the ticket on the counter. He said, "I need to speak to Mr. Harrington." Marcus looked at the ticket. He looked at Ethan. He looked at the worn work shirt, the scuffed boots, the brass key visible at the collar. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply picked up the phone and said, "One moment, sir." Ethan waited. He checked his watch. 7:52 a.m. The phone rang on the other end of the line. And then, at 7:53 a.m., his own phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. The screen was cracked in the top corner, and the text message glowed against the glass, the words clear and sharp. "Please come back. I need to see you." He looked up. Marcus was watching him, the phone still pressed to his ear. Behind him, through a glass door, Ethan could see a man in a charcoal suit walking toward the lobby, his silver-gray hair slicked back, his face pale. James Harrington had seen the security footage. James Harrington had made the call. And now, James Harrington was walking through the lobby with his hand extended, his mouth opening to speak, his eyes fixed on the man in the faded work shirt who had walked into his hotel and refused to be invisible. Ethan did not move. He stood at the front desk with the ticket in his hand and his daughter's name on his lips, and he waited. Ethan's phone buzzed at 6:43 a.m., a text from an unknown number. "Please come back. I need to see you." He stared at the screen for a long moment, the light from the phone casting shadows across his face. The brass key hung cold against his chest, and he could feel the weight of it, the same weight he felt every morning when he woke to an empty bed. He did not reply immediately. Instead, he set the phone down and finished making Lily's breakfast. Toast with butter, cut into triangles, exactly the way she liked it. He moved through the small kitchen with a practiced economy, conserving energy for the day ahead, for the school drop-off, for the list of repairs waiting at Margaret's estate. Lily came in, her braids slightly askew, her yellow dress with the hand-stitched daisies already on. She held her stuffed rabbit by one loose ear, dragging it behind her like a loyal dog. "Daddy, are we going back to the big house?" He knelt, straightened her collar. "Maybe." The lady was mean. Yes, she was. He did not lie to her. He had never lied to her, not about her mother, not about the hospital room, not about the clock that read 3:17 a.m. when Sarah's hand went still in his. But sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes they try to fix them. He called Margaret as Lily finished her toast. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice warm and steady, the same voice that had told him to take his time, to breathe, to come back when he was ready. She did not ask questions. She simply said, "I'll have the kettle on. Bring her over." The drive to the hotel took 40 minutes. Ethan wore the same faded navy blue work shirt, but he had washed it the night before, pressed it with an iron he rarely used. The worn khaki pants were clean, the scuffed brown leather boots polished for the first time in months. He did not own a suit. He did not own anything that belonged in a place with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. But he had cleaned himself up for Lily, for the chance that this time might be different. He parked in the same lot, took Lily's hand, and walked toward the revolving door. The morning light caught the brass fittings, the gold lettering on the glass, and for a moment he saw his own reflection, a man in a work shirt, a child at his side, a brass key against his chest. He pushed through. The lobby was quieter in the morning. The chandelier still hung overhead, its prisms catching the light and scattering it across the marble floor. A few guests milled about, a couple at the concierge desk, a businessman reading a newspaper in one of the leather armchairs. The grandfather clock against the wall read 8:17, and there was James Harrington, the general manager, walking toward them. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver-gray hair slicked back and a charcoal three-piece suit that fit him like armor. His hand was extended before he reached them, a gesture of peace, of apology, of something Ethan did not fully trust. But he took it. The handshake was firm, the grip of a man used to being in control. "Mr. Caldwell," James said, his voice low and measured, "I owe you an apology." Ethan did not speak. He waited. "I reviewed the security footage last night. I made some calls. The raffle was legitimate. The ticket was yours." James paused, his pale blue eyes flickering down to Lily, then back up. "My staff made a terrible mistake, and I am sorry." Ethan nodded. He had heard apologies before, from contractors, from clients, from the hospital administrator who had told him there was nothing more they could do. Apologies were words. They cost nothing. But this one, coming from a man in a three-piece suit, standing in a lobby that could have been his own, felt different. "I'd like to make it right," James continued. "The suite is ready. Dinner tonight, if you'll have it. Whatever you need." Ethan looked down at Lily. She was staring at the chandelier again, her small hand wrapped around his thumb, her stuffed rabbit dangling from the other. He thought about the apartment, the leaky faucet he had not fixed, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter. He thought about Margaret, who had never asked for anything, who had given him work when no one else would. He thought about the hospital room, the clock at 3:17 a.m., the way his hands had refused to shake even when he begged them to. "I don't want the suite," he said. "I want a job." James's expression shifted. Surprise, curiosity, a flicker of something else. "A job? I can fix things? I can manage a team. I've been doing it for years, just not in a place like this." Ethan's voice was steady, the same voice he used when he told Lily that her mother was not coming back. "I need benefits. I need a schedule that works for my daughter's school. That's all." James studied him for a long moment. The lobby was quiet, the only sound the soft ticking of the grandfather clock and the distant hum of the city outside. Then James nodded. "Come back tonight. Dinner first. Then we'll talk." Ethan picked up Lily from Margaret's at 5:30. Margaret had given her cookies and milk, had read her a story, had brushed her hair and retied her braids. She was a steady presence, a woman who had seen her own share of grief, who understood that sometimes the best thing you could do was show up and be there. "You look tired," Margaret said, handing him a cup of tea. "I am." "She would be proud of you." He did not answer. He simply nodded, the brass key pressing against his chest, and took Lily's hand. They returned to the hotel at 7 p.m. The lobby was transformed. Dimmed lights, the chandelier glowing like a constellation, the sound of a piano drifting from the restaurant. The receptionist was at her desk, but her face went pale when she saw them. She did not speak. She did not need to. James was already walking toward them, his hand extended, his silver watch catching the light. "Mr. Caldwell, Lily, welcome back." The dinner was quiet, formal, the kind of meal Ethan had not had in years. The staff were attentive, the food impeccable, but he felt the weight of every eye on him, the silent judgment of a room full of people who did not know his story. Lily ate her pasta with careful precision, her eyes wide as she watched the waiters move between tables. James joined them for dessert, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He asked about Ethan's life, his work, his daughter. Ethan answered honestly. The handyman jobs, the apartment, the school drop-off at 8:15 every morning. He did not mention the hospital room, the clock, the hand that went still. Those were not for a man in a three-piece suit. But James must have seen something in his eyes, because he set down his glass and said, "I'll make you a deal. The maintenance supervisor position is yours, full benefits, a schedule that works for you. But I need you to understand something. This hotel is not just a building. It's a family, and families take care of each other." Ethan looked at Lily, who was drawing on a napkin with a crayon the waiter had brought her. He thought about the receptionist, the way her eyes had slid past him like he was nothing. He thought about the security guard, the firm hand on his shoulder, the door closing behind him. "The receptionist," he said. "Don't fire her. Retrain her." James blinked. "Excuse me?" "She made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. But she can learn." Ethan's voice was quiet, but it carried. "Give her a chance." James was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "She'll be moved to a back office role temporarily, but I'll make sure she gets the training." Ethan and Lily stood in the lobby again, but this time the receptionist's face was pale, and the general manager was walking toward them with his hand extended. The chandelier still hung overhead, the marble floor still gleamed, but something had shifted. The air was different. The weight was lighter. James Harrington stood alone in his office, the security footage frozen on Ethan's face, and made a phone call to corporate. James Harrington stood alone in his office, the security footage frozen on Ethan's face, and made a phone call to corporate. The call was brief, his voice flat, professional. The voice of a man who had made a mistake and was now trying to contain it before it became a story. He explained the situation, the raffle, the dismissal, the quiet man in the work shirt who had not argued, who had simply checked his watch and walked out with a 6-year-old girl holding his hand. Corporate was silent for a long moment. Then a woman's voice, cool and precise, said, "Send me everything. The footage, the ticket, the date of the raffle, and James, do not fire anyone yet." Ethan Caldwell did not know about the phone call. He was in the hotel suite with Lily, watching her stand at the floor-to-ceiling window, her small face pressed against the glass. The city spread below them like a circuit board of light, and she was tracing the headlights with her finger. He sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, the brass key cold against his chest, and watched her. The suite was too large for 2 people. The couch was upholstered in cream silk. The bathroom had a marble tub big enough to swim in, and the minibar was stocked with bottles he could not name. It was the kind of room his wife would have laughed at. Not unkindly, but with a soft, disbelieving shake of her head, as if to say, "Who lives like this?" He had not meant to accept the dinner. He had meant to ask for the job, for the stability, for the insurance that would cover Lily's checkups and the dental appointments he had been putting off for 6 months. But James had insisted, and Ethan had seen something in the general manager's eyes, not pity, but a kind of careful respect. The respect of a man who had looked at the security footage and realized he had almost made a terrible mistake. So, Ethan had picked up Lily from Margaret's, had washed his face in the small bathroom of his apartment, had driven back to the hotel with the ticket folded in his pocket. Now he was here, in a room that cost more per night than he made in a month, and he did not know what to do with his hands. Lily turned from the window. "Daddy, can we see the stars?" He looked at the ceiling. The suite had a skylight over the bed, a rectangle of dark glass that showed nothing but the faint orange glow of the city. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Too many lights." She nodded, accepting this, and climbed onto the bed beside him. Her stuffed rabbit, the one with the loose ear, was tucked under her arm. He had sewn the ear back on 3 times, and each time it had come loose again, and each time he had sewn it again because Sarah had bought the rabbit at a hospital gift shop 2 days before Lily was born, and he would repair it until his fingers could no longer hold a needle. Dinner was served in the hotel restaurant, a room of white tablecloths and soft piano music, and waiters who appeared at the elbow without sound. James joined them for a drink, a glass of red wine for himself, sparkling water for Ethan, and a small plate of berries for Lily. The conversation was careful, measured. James asked about Ethan's work, and Ethan answered honestly. He fixed things: pipes, windows, locks, boilers. He had been doing it for 2 years, ever since Sarah died. He did not say that he had once managed a portfolio of commercial properties, that he had built a company from a single contract into a regional operation, that he had sold it all to pay for the hospital bills that had not been covered by insurance. He did not say that the gold wedding ring on his left hand was the only thing of value he still owned, besides the brass key around his neck and the small yellow dress in Lily's closet. James listened. He did not interrupt. When Ethan finished, James set down his wine glass and said, "I have an offer for you." The offer was simple: a position as the hotel's maintenance supervisor, full-time, with benefits, and a schedule that would allow him to pick Lily up from school at 3 o'clock every afternoon. The pay was modest, more than he made as a handyman, but not by much. But the insurance was good, and the job came with a small apartment on the hotel grounds, a 2-bedroom unit with a window that faced the courtyard. Ethan did not hesitate. He said yes. James nodded, then added, "There's one more thing. The receptionist who turned you away. I've moved her to a back office position temporarily. She'll be retrained. But I want to know what you want me to do with her." Ethan looked down at his plate. He thought of the way she had not looked at him, the way her eyes had slid from his collar to his shoes and then back to her screen. He thought of the security guard's hand on his arm, the slight pressure, the unspoken command. He thought of Lily's face, pressed into his side, her small fingers wrapped around his thumb. "Don't fire her," he said. "Just teach her to look up." James stared at him for a long moment. Then he raised his glass. "You're a better man than I am, Ethan Caldwell." The next morning, Ethan started his new job. He was given a uniform, a navy blue polo shirt with the hotel's crest embroidered over the heart, and a pair of black work pants that fit better than his khakis. He was given a schedule printed on a laminated card with his name and his shifts and a note at the bottom that read, "Pickup at 3 p.m. Lily Caldwell, Grade 1, Room 7. He was given a toolbox, new and clean and heavy with tools that had never been used, and he set it on the floor of the maintenance office and looked at it for a long time. The first week was quiet. He fixed a leaky faucet in room 412, replaced a light fixture in the lobby, unclogged a drain in the kitchen. The staff watched him with polite curiosity, the way they watched all new hires, but they did not approach. He did not mind. He worked slowly, deliberately, the way he had learned to work after Sarah died. One thing at a time, no rush, no panic. He always carried 2 of everything, 2 wrenches, 2 screwdrivers, 2 rolls of tape. Sarah used to laugh about it. She would say, "You'd back up a sunrise if you could." And he would say, "I would." By the second week, the staff began to notice. The housekeeping manager, a woman named Rosa with silver hair and a quiet laugh, asked him to look at a broken cart. He fixed it in 10 minutes. The head chef, a tall man named Victor who never smiled, asked him to adjust the temperature in the walk-in cooler. He did it without a word, and Victor nodded once, a gesture of respect that cost him nothing but meant everything. By the third week, the maintenance office felt like his. He had organized the shelves, labeled the bins, hung a small photograph of Lily on the wall beside his desk. He had found a rhythm. He would wake at 5:30, make Lily's breakfast, walk her to the school that was 3 blocks from the hotel, then return to the maintenance office and read the work orders for the day. At 3 o'clock, he would walk back to the school, pick her up, and bring her to the hotel where she would sit in the corner of the office with her crayons and her rabbit and draw pictures of the chandelier. James Harrington watched from a distance. He did not interfere. He had made his phone call to corporate, and corporate had said wait, and he was waiting. But every morning, he checked the security footage from the night before, and every morning, he saw Ethan Caldwell walking through the lobby with his toolbox and his quiet, steady gaze. And he thought about the man he had almost thrown out of his building. He had a winning ticket in his hand. They told him to leave anyway. But now, he owned the building. The question is, what did he do next? James Harrington stood alone in his office, the security footage frozen on Ethan's face, and made a phone call to corporate. The screen showed a man in a faded navy work shirt standing at a mahogany desk, a cream-colored ticket held loosely in his hand, a small girl pressed against his side. Harrington had watched the clip 17 times. Each time, he noticed something new. The way Ethan did not flinch when the security guard approached, the way he checked his watch with the precision of a man who had learned to measure time in increments of consequence, the way he took his daughter's hand and walked out without a word of protest. That was not the behavior of a man who expected to be dismissed. That was the behavior of a man who knew he would be back. The call to corporate lasted 4 minutes. Harrington spoke to a vice president named Sandra Chen, a woman he had known for 12 years, a woman who trusted his instincts because those instincts had never been wrong. He told her about the raffle, the dismissal, the man in the work shirt who had not argued. He told her about the brass key he had glimpsed around Ethan's neck, the way the child's dress had hand-stitched daisies around the hem, the quiet dignity of a man who carried a dented green metal toolbox and asked for nothing. Sandra was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Bring him in. I want to meet him." Harrington hung up and sat in the dark, his silver watch catching the light from the frozen screen. He thought about the receptionist, a young woman named Claire, who had been trained to read a person in 3 seconds and had read Ethan wrong. He thought about the security guard, a man named Marcus, who had done his job without cruelty, but without thought. He thought about the crowd in the lobby, the way they had lifted their glasses and laughed. And he thought about the small girl in the yellow dress, holding a stuffed rabbit with one loose ear, looking up at the chandelier as if it were a sky full of stars. He made a second call, this time to the community center that had hosted the raffle. A woman named Patricia answered, her voice warm and tired. She remembered Ethan. "He comes every year," she said. "He never buys more than 1 ticket. He says one is enough if it's meant to be. She paused. His wife used to come with him. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. He still brings the little girl. She wears the same dress every time, the one her mother made. Harrington thanked her and hung up. He looked at the clock on his desk. 7:14 p.m. He had one more call to make. Ethan was in the kitchen of his small apartment when the phone rang. He had just put Lily to bed, her small body curled under a thin blanket, the stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. He had read her a story about a bear who found his way home, and she had fallen asleep before the bear reached the last page. He had sat beside her for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, feeling the weight of the brass key against his chest. It was the key to the house he and Sarah had bought together, the house he had sold after she died, the house he still dreamed about. He kept it as a reminder that he had once built something worth keeping. The phone buzzed. He did not recognize the number, but he answered anyway. Mr. Caldwell? The voice was smooth, professional, but there was something else in it, a note of hesitation. This is James Harrington from the Grand Pacific Hotel. I need to apologize. In person. I need to make this right. Ethan did not speak for a long moment. He looked at the ticket on the kitchen table, the one that had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases were soft as cloth. He thought about Lily's face when he had told her they were going to a hotel with a chandelier, the way her eyes had lit up, the way she had held his hand so tightly he could feel her pulse. He thought about the receptionist's gaze, the security guard's hand on his shoulder, the laughter in the lobby, and he thought about the way he had walked out without a word, not because he was weak, but because he was saving his strength for the moment when it would matter. I'll be there tomorrow, he said, 8 in the morning. And he hung up. The next morning, Ethan dropped Lily at school. The principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Delgado, smiled at him and said, She's doing well, Ethan. She talks about her mother sometimes, but she's learning to carry the memory instead of the weight. He thanked her and drove to the hotel. He was wearing the same shirt, but he had washed it and pressed it. The same khaki pants, but he had brushed the dust from the cuffs. The same boots, but he had wiped the scuffs clean. He did not look like a man who belonged in a lobby of cashmere and crystal, but he looked like a man who knew how to fix what was broken. He carried the dented green metal toolbox in his right hand, the brass key warm against his chest. The revolving door swept him into the hush of the lobby. This time, the receptionist did not look away. Her name was Claire, and she was standing behind the mahogany desk with her hands clasped in front of her, her face pale. She had been told to expect him. She had been told to apologize. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the general manager appeared. James Harrington walked across the marble floor with his hand extended. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver gray hair slicked back and a charcoal suit that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. But his eyes were not calculating. They were careful, almost soft. Mr. Caldwell, he said, thank you for coming back. Ethan shook his hand. I came back for my daughter, he said. She deserves to see the chandelier. Harrington nodded. He led Ethan to a private office, a room with a view of the city and a desk that was too large for one man. He closed the door and sat down, his hands folded in front of him. I watched the footage, he said. I saw how you handled yourself. I saw how you held your daughter. I saw how you checked your watch. You were not angry. You were patient. That is rare. Ethan did not respond. He placed the toolbox on the floor and sat down across from Harrington. He waited. I want to offer you a job, Harrington said. Maintenance supervisor, full benefits, a schedule that works around your daughter's school hours. And I want you to know that Claire will be retrained. She will not be fired. She will learn. Ethan looked at him for a long moment. I don't want her fired, he said. I want her to learn that a man in a work shirt might own the building one day. I want her to learn that a child in a hand-sewn dress might grow up to run it. I want her to learn that the people who walk through that door are not what they appear to be. And I want her to learn it from me. Harrington was silent. Then he smiled, a small, genuine smile that did not reach his eyes but reached something deeper. When can you start? Tomorrow, Ethan said. But I have one condition. I want to meet the team first, all of them. The bellhops, the housekeepers, the kitchen staff. I want to know their names. I want to know their children's names. I want to know what they need to do their jobs well, and then I want to make sure they have it. Harrington nodded. He stood up and extended his hand again. Ethan shook it, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt like he was building something again. A year later, Ethan Caldwell stood in the same lobby, but this time he was wearing a charcoal suit. Not because he had to, but because the staff had bought it for him as a gift. They had pooled their money, 73 people from housekeeping to the front desk, and they had presented it to him at a staff meeting. He had tried to refuse. They had insisted, and when he put it on, Lily had looked at him and said, "Daddy, you look like you belong anywhere." He walked through the lobby, nodding to the bellhops, stopping to talk to a housekeeper whose son had just started kindergarten. He paused at the front desk, where Claire was training a new employee. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell." He smiled back. "Good morning, Claire." He checked his watch. 8 a.m., time to begin. He had a winning ticket in his hand. They told him to leave anyway. But now he owned the building. The question is, what did he do next?